The bar on Nexus Station was crowded with soldiers from a dozen different species. Blue smoke drifted through the air, mixing with the smell of various alien drinks. In the corner, 4 Craxian soldiers sat around a metal table, their scaled skin gleaming under the harsh lights. They were big creatures, each one standing nearly 8 feet tall with muscles that could crush steel. Captain Vex took a long drink from his glass and laughed. His yellow eyes swept across the bar until they landed on a small figure sitting alone at the counter. She was human, barely 5.5 feet tall, with brown hair tied back in a simple ponytail. She wore civilian clothes, nothing special. Just dark pants and a worn jacket. "Look at that," Vex said to his companions, pointing at the woman with his clawed hand. "The humans sent us another one of their females. What do they expect her to do in a war zone?" The other Craxians chuckled. Lieutenant Tor leaned back in his chair, making it creak under his weight. "I heard humans think they're tough. But look at her. She's drinking water while we're here with Nexarian fire whiskey. Probably never even held a weapon." Sarah Chen heard every word. Her enhanced hearing picked up conversations from across the room, but she didn't turn around. She kept her eyes on her glass of water, counting the ice cubes as they slowly melted. The bartender, a 4-armed Veloxian, glanced at her nervously. He could sense the tension building. "Maybe we should introduce ourselves," Vex suggested, standing up. His squad followed him as he walked across the bar. Other patrons quickly moved out of their way. Everyone knew better than to get between Craxian soldiers and their entertainment. Vex stopped behind Sarah, casting a shadow over her. "Little human," he said, his voice dripping with false friendliness. "Are you lost? This is a military station. No place for soft creatures like you." Sarah took another sip of water before turning around slowly. Her dark eyes met Vex's yellow ones without flinching. "I'm exactly where I need to be," she said calmly. The Craxians burst out laughing. The sound was harsh, like grinding metal. Vex slapped his hand on the bar, leaving claw marks in the metal surface. "Did you hear that?" he asked his squad. "She thinks she belongs here." "Tell me, little human," Tor said, moving closer. "Have you ever killed anyone? Have you ever seen real combat? Or are you here to serve food to the real soldiers?" Sarah's expression didn't change. She noticed how they positioned themselves, trying to surround her. Classic intimidation tactic. Amateur move. "I've seen my share," she answered simply. "Your share?" Vex mocked. "What did you do? Shoot at target practice? Maybe you helped evacuate civilians?" He leaned down, bringing his face close to hers. His breath smelled like rotting meat. "Let me tell you something, human. War isn't for your kind, especially not your females. You're too weak, too emotional, too fragile." The other soldiers nodded and grunted their agreement. One of them, a scarred veteran named Krill, added, "I've seen human soldiers break down crying after their first battle. They don't have the stomach for real violence." Sarah finished her water and set the glass down gently. "Interesting opinion," she said. "Based on what, exactly?" "Based on facts," Vex snarled. "Humans have only been in the Galactic Alliance for 50 years. You're newcomers. Soft newcomers who think technology makes up for natural weakness. But when the Void Hunters attacked last month, where were the human forces? Hiding behind their ships, while we Craxians did the real fighting. We lost 40 good soldiers in that battle," Tor added. "Real soldiers. Not whatever you pretend to be." Sarah stood up slowly, and the Craxians stepped back instinctively. Even though she was much smaller, something in her movement made them wary. "The Void Hunter attack," she repeated. "Sector 7. I remember." "You remember?" Vex scoffed. "Were you watching from a safe bunker somewhere?" "No," Sarah said. "I was hunting." The word hung in the air like a threat. The bartender started polishing glasses faster. A nervous habit. Other patrons began finishing their drinks and heading for the exit. Krill laughed. But it sounded forced. "Hunting? What were you hunting, human? Local wildlife?" Sarah smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I was hunting the Void Hunter assassination squad that infiltrated the station. The one that killed your 40 soldiers. Sarah. The laughter died. Vex's eyes narrowed. That's impossible. No one even knew they were here until after. Until after they completed their mission. Sarah finished. Yes. That's what happens when you rely only on brute force. You miss the shadows. You're lying, Tor growled. Command said the assassins escaped. No one could track them through the ventilation systems. Command was wrong, Sarah said simply. I tracked them. I found them. And I dealt with them. Vex's hand moved to his sidearm. You expect us to believe a tiny human female took down a Void Hunter kill team? They're the deadliest assassins in the galaxy. Sarah shrugged. Believe what you want. But check the records. 3 days after your soldiers died, 6 Void Hunter bodies were found in Maintenance Shaft C7. Each one killed with a single precise strike. No energy weapons, no explosions, just clean, quiet, efficient death. The Craxians exchanged glances. They had heard about those bodies. Command had been baffled. The Void Hunters had been killed with primitive weapons, blades, and projectiles. Everyone assumed it was interfaction fighting among the assassins themselves. Even if that was you, Vex said, trying to regain control of the situation. It means nothing. You caught them by surprise. In a real fight, face to face, you wouldn't last 5 seconds. Sarah picked up her jacket from the bar stool. Maybe you're right, she said. Maybe I'm just a weak, emotional, fragile human female who doesn't belong here. The Craxians relaxed slightly, thinking they had won the argument. Vex grinned, showing rows of sharp teeth. Finally, some sense. Run along now, little human. Leave the fighting to real warriors. Sarah walked past them toward the door. Just before she reached it, she paused and looked back. One question, she said. Your squad is scheduled for patrol tomorrow in the asteroid field, right? Sector 12? Vex frowned. How did you know that? Cruised. Lucky guess, Sarah said. Be careful out there. I heard rumors of Void Hunter activity in that area. But I'm sure 4 big, strong Craxian warriors can handle anything that comes their way. She left the bar, and the Craxians stood there for a moment in silence. Then Vex laughed again, louder this time. Did you see that? She tried to scare us. As if we'd be frightened of a human's warnings. His squad joined in the laughter, and they returned to their table to finish drinking. They spent the rest of the night making jokes about weak humans and their delusions of competence. Other soldiers joined them, sharing their own stories of human inadequacy. But the bartender noticed something they didn't. When Sarah had set down her glass, she'd left something underneath it. A small metal disc, no bigger than a coin. He picked it up carefully and his 4 arms began to tremble. It was a hunter's mark, the kind left by the most dangerous predators in the galaxy to mark their chosen prey. He quickly pocketed the disc and said nothing. He had been tending bar on Nexus Station for 20 years. He had seen all kinds of soldiers from every corner of the galaxy, but only once before had he seen someone leave a hunter's mark. That person had been a Zalani assassin who went on to eliminate an entire criminal syndicate over the course of a single night. The bartender looked at the Craxians, still laughing and drinking, completely unaware of what had just happened. He almost felt sorry for them. Almost. But they had chosen to mock the wrong person. They had laughed at someone who didn't need size or strength or scales to be dangerous. As the night wore on, the Craxians grew drunker and louder. They retold the story of their encounter with the human woman, each telling, making her seem smaller and weaker and more pathetic. Other soldiers bought them drinks, congratulating them on putting a human in her place. To the Craxians, someone shouted, the real warriors of the Alliance. They raised their glasses high, scales gleaming, teeth bared in triumph. Tomorrow they would go on patrol, confident in their superiority, certain of their strength. They would fly through the asteroid field of Sector 12, the best equipped and most feared squad in their regiment. They had no idea that Sarah Chen was already there, waiting in the darkness between the rocks. She had left the bar and gone straight to her ship, a small, unmarked vessel that most people would mistake for a cargo hauler. But beneath its plain exterior were stealth systems that could hide from any sensor, weapons that made no sound, and engines that could dance through asteroid fields like a ghost. While the Craxians drank and boasted, Sarah prepared. She checked her equipment with the patience of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. Every tool had its place. Every weapon was cleaned and ready. She didn't need anger or emotion to drive her. This wasn't about revenge or wounded pride. This was about teaching a lesson. The Craxians thought humans were weak because they were smaller. They thought human women were especially helpless because they didn't have claws or scales or natural armor. They looked at Sarah and saw prey. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In the bar, Vex ordered another round, his laughter echoing off the metal walls. "To think," he said, "she actually believed she could threaten us. A human female. What's next? Will the Pufflings try to join the military?" His squad roared with laughter. Other species joined in, though some were more nervous than amused. A few of the smarter ones remembered that humans had not gained their place in the Galactic Alliance through diplomacy alone. They had earned it through victories that no one had expected, using tactics that no one had seen before. But the Craxians were too drunk on their own superiority to remember history. They had forgotten that on Earth, humans were not the strongest or fastest predators. They had survived and thrived through intelligence, endurance, and above all, the ability to hunt in ways their prey never expected. As the station's artificial night cycle began, the bar slowly emptied. The Craxians finally stumbled back to their quarters, still chuckling about their encounter. Vex fell onto his bunk, his head spinning from the alcohol. "Weak humans," he muttered before passing out. "Tomorrow will show everyone what real soldiers can do." In the darkness of Sector 12, Sarah finished her preparations. She had studied the patrol route, calculated the timing, and identified the perfect location. The asteroid field was a maze of floating rocks, some the size of buildings, others no bigger than a ground car. It was the perfect hunting ground for someone who knew how to use terrain to their advantage. She powered down all non-essential systems and settled in to wait. Patience was something the Craxians would never understand. They thought strength meant charging forward, crushing enemies with brute force. They measured power in muscle mass and weapon yield. But Sarah knew better. She had learned from the ancient hunters of Earth, from the persistence hunters who could track prey for days, from the ambush predators who struck from shadows. She had trained with human special forces who turned weakness into strength, who used enemy expectations against them. The Craxians had laughed at her. They had dismissed her as weak, emotional, and fragile. Tomorrow, in the silence between the asteroids, they would learn why humans had survived every predator Earth had thrown at them. They would discover why human women, despite being physically smaller than males, had been hunters and warriors throughout history. They would understand, in their final moments, why you should never underestimate a human who says they're hunting. Sarah closed her eyes and let her breathing slow. The hunt would begin soon, and when it was over, word would spread through the station, through the military, through the entire alliance. The message would be clear: never laugh at a human hunter, especially when she's already chosen you as prey. The patrol ship Thunderclaw cut through space towards Sector 12, its powerful engines leaving a trail of blue light. Inside the cockpit, Captain Vex nursed a headache from the previous night's drinking. His 3 squad members were in similar condition, but Craxian pride prevented them from showing weakness. Approaching the asteroid field, Tor announced from the navigation station. "Sensors show clear. No signs of Void Hunter activity." Vex grunted. "Of course not. That human was just trying to scare us." "Pathetic." He rubbed his scaled temples, trying to ease the pounding in his skull. "Set course through the standard patrol route. Let's make this quick." The asteroid field stretched before them like a frozen storm. Massive chunks of rock tumbled slowly through space, some containing valuable minerals that made this sector important to protect. The Thunderclaw was a heavy assault craft, built for firepower and durability. Its shields could withstand direct hits from most weapons, and its cannons could reduce smaller ships to atoms. Krill manned the weapons station, his scarred hands resting on the controls. "I almost wish something would happen," he muttered. "I could use a fight to clear my head." "Careful what you wish for," Tor joked. "That human female might jump out and attack us with her terrifying water glass." They all laughed, the sound harsh in the enclosed space. Vex engaged the autopilot and leaned back in his command chair. "Divide into standard patrol pattern. Tor, take us through grid 7. Krill, keep the weapons hot just in case. Drax, monitor communications." Drax, the youngest of the squad, nodded from his station. He was still learning, eager to prove himself to his veteran squadmates. "Yes, Captain. All channels clear so far." The Thunderclaw moved deeper into the asteroid field. The rocks grew denser here, forcing them to slow down and navigate more carefully. Ancient impacts had created a twisted maze of stone and metal, perfect for hiding smugglers or pirates. But the Craxians weren't worried. Their ship's sensors could detect any threat long before it became dangerous, or so they thought. Sarah's ship hung motionless in the shadow of a massive asteroid, all systems except life support powered down. She had been waiting for 3 hours, patient as a spider in its web. The modified stealth coating on her hull absorbed sensor pings, making her effectively invisible to standard detection systems. She watched through passive sensors as the Thunderclaw approached. Right on schedule. The Craxians were following standard patrol pattern Alpha 7. Just as she had predicted, military minds often fell into routines, especially when they felt safe. Sarah smiled. They felt safe because they were in a warship. They felt safe because they were Craxians. They felt safe because they couldn't imagine a single human in a small ship could pose any threat. She waited until they passed her position, then brought her systems online one by one. Not the engines, not yet. First, she activated a special device she had installed years ago, a gift from a Terran Black Ops program that officially didn't exist. The quantum interference generator sent out waves that would look like normal background radiation to most sensors, but these waves carried a very specific pattern. One that would gradually degrade the Thunderclaw's sensor resolution without triggering any alarms. It was like slowly dimming lights so gradually that the eye didn't notice until it was too dark to see. Inside the Thunderclaw, Drax frowned at his console. "Captain, I'm getting some strange readings." "Define strange," Vex said without looking up from his tactical display. "Just interference. Like static. But the sensors say everything's normal." Tor checked his own screens. "I'm not seeing anything. Probably just background radiation from the asteroids." "Some of these rocks are radioactive," Drax nodded, but something felt wrong. He had been trained to trust his instincts, but he was also the rookie. He didn't want to seem paranoid in front of his experienced squadmates. "You're probably right," he said, adjusting the sensors to compensate for what he assumed was natural interference. That was his first mistake. Sarah brought her engines online at 5% power. The modified thrusters made virtually no heat signature, no radiation spike. She began moving, using the asteroid field's natural rotation to mask her approach. Every pilot learned to fly in straight lines, to fight the chaotic movement of debris fields. Sarah had learned to dance with them. The Thunderclaw continued its patrol, oblivious to the predator stalking them. Vex was telling another story about a battle against pirates. Gesturing with his clawed hands, Krill was half listening, half dozing at his station. Tor was playing a game on a secondary screen, confident that the autopilot could handle the simple navigation. Only Drax remained alert, and even he was starting to relax. The static on his screens was getting worse, but all the diagnostic systems showed green. Must be his imagination. Sarah positioned herself carefully. The Thunderclaw would pass between 2 large asteroids in approximately 60 seconds. The gap was wide enough for the warship, but would limit their maneuvering options. In combat, you never wanted to limit your own movement. But the Craxians weren't thinking about combat. They were thinking about finishing their patrol and getting back to the station. She activated the second phase of her hunt. A small drone, no bigger than a Craxian's fist, detached from her ship. It had been painted to look like a chunk of asteroid debris. complete with micrometeor impact marks. The drone drifted toward the Thunderclaw's path, tumbling naturally. Inside the warship, proximity alarms chimed softly. Small debris ahead, Tor reported automatically, adjusting course to avoid. It was a minor adjustment, just a few degrees, but it put them exactly where Sarah wanted them. The drone wasn't meant to hit them. As the Thunderclaw passed by, the drone activated, not an explosion that would be too obvious. Instead, it released a cloud of metallic chaff, particles specifically designed to cling to shield generators and create microscopic fluctuations in the energy field. To the Craxians, it would feel like flying through dust, harmless. Their shields flickered for just a moment, recalibrating to deal with the minor irritation. That moment was all Sarah needed. She fired a single shot, not an energy weapon, those were too easy to detect and trace. This was a kinetic projectile, launched from a railgun that had been charging for the past hour. The projectile was tiny, needle-thin, designed to punch through shields during that millisecond of recalibration. It struck the Thunderclaw's primary sensor array. Inside, Drax's screens went dark. "Captain, primary sensors are offline." Vex spun in his chair. "What? How?" "I don't know. Everything just stopped." Drax's hands flew over his controls, switching to secondary systems. And, could be a malfunction," Tor suggested, though he was sitting up straight now. "Game forgotten. These old ships. The Thunderclaw is only 2 years old," Vex snarled. "Krill. Charge weapons. Drax. Get those sensors back online now." Krill's hands moved to comply, but he frowned. "Captain, weapons are responding slowly. It's like something's interfering with the targeting systems." The quantum interference that had been slowly building was now affecting multiple systems. Not enough to shut them down, just enough to make everything sluggish, unreliable, like trying to fight while drunk. "All stop," Vex ordered. "Shields to maximum. Someone's out there." They hung motionless between the asteroids, a warship suddenly feeling very vulnerable. The secondary sensors came online, but the resolution was poor. They could see the asteroids around them, but not much else. "Could be the Void Hunters," Drax said, voice tight with worry. "Or pirates," Tor added. "This is a standard ambush position." Vex stood, his hangover forgotten. "Or one very stupid human. All stations, combat alert. If anything moves, blast it." They waited, tense minutes ticking by. Nothing happened. No attack. No demands for surrender. Just silence and slowly tumbling rocks. "Maybe it really was a malfunction," Krill said eventually. That's when the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in immediately, bathing everything in red. But for 3 seconds, they had been in total darkness. 3 seconds of vulnerability. "What's happening?" Drax's voice cracked slightly. "EMP?" Tor guessed. "But our shields should have stopped." The lights came back on. Everything seemed normal. "Except, Captain," Krill said slowly. "My weapon station is locked out. Manual override isn't responding." Vex rushed to the console, pushing Krill aside. Sure enough, the weapons were offline. Not damaged, not destroyed, just locked, as if someone had inserted a virus into their systems during those 3 seconds of darkness. "This is impossible," Vex muttered. "Our cybersecurity is—" A soft chime interrupted him. On the main view screen, a message appeared. Just 2 words. "Found you." The Craxians looked at each other. Vex felt a cold sensation creeping up his spine, something he hadn't experienced in years. "Fear. Get us out of here," he ordered. "Full power to engines." Tor grabbed the controls, but the ship responded slowly. They began moving, picking up speed, heading for the edge of the asteroid field. But something was wrong. The navigation computer kept trying to adjust their course, pulling them back toward the denser parts of the field. "I can't override it," Tor reported, fighting with the controls. "It's like the ship wants to go deeper." Sarah watched them struggle, her fingers dancing over her own controls. She had spent years studying Craxian technology, learning its weaknesses. Their ships were powerful, but predictable. Their security systems were strong against brute force attacks but vulnerable to patient, subtle infiltration. She had not attacked their ship. She had taught it new behaviors. Like training an animal. The Thunderclaw now responded to two masters, and Sarah's commands were taking priority. She fired her second shot. This one was visible, a bright lance of energy that passed just meters from the Thunderclaw's hull. Not meant to hit, meant to herd. The Craxian's sluggish sensors registered the attack, and Tor instinctively jerked the ship away directly into the path Sarah had chosen. "Return fire!" Vex roared. "I can't." Krill slammed his fists on the dead console. "Weapons are completely locked." Another shot, this one even closer. The Thunderclaw dove between two asteroids, exactly where Sarah wanted them. The passage was narrow, forcing them to slow down. Perfect for the next phase. Sarah activated her third surprise. Charges she had placed on the asteroids hours ago detonated, not large explosions, just enough to shift the rock's rotation. The passage began to close like a mouth. "Get us out," Vex commanded. Tor pushed the engines to full power. The Thunderclaw surged forward, scraping past the closing rocks with meters to spare. They burst out the other side, directly into Sarah's firing solution. This time, she didn't miss. The kinetic round punched through their weakened shields and struck the primary engine coupling. Not enough damage to destroy the ship, but enough to cripple it. The Thunderclaw spun wildly, out of control, stabilizers failing. Tor fought to regain control. "We're losing altitude." There was no altitude in space, but old habits died hard. The Thunderclaw tumbled toward a massive asteroid. Its surface pocked with craters and sharp ridges. "Brace for impact!" Vex shouted. They hit hard. The shields absorbed most of the impact, but the crew was thrown around like dolls. Krill's head struck his console, leaving him dazed. Drax's arm bent at an unnatural angle. Only Vex and Tor remained fully conscious, though both were bleeding from various cuts. The Thunderclaw lay crippled on the asteroid's surface, half buried in regolith. Emergency beacons activated automatically, sending distress calls that would take hours to reach the nearest Alliance base. Vex pulled himself upright, spitting blood. "Damage report. Engines are gone," Tor said, checking his still-functioning displays. "Weapons still locked, shields at 10% and falling. Life support is stable, but..." He trailed off. "But we're not going anywhere," Vex finished. He helped Drax set his broken arm, then checked on Krill. The veteran was conscious but groggy. "Everyone into emergency suits. Whoever did this might try to board us." They struggled into their combat suits, designed to let Craxians fight in any environment. Vex grabbed a plasma rifle from the emergency locker. At least these weapons weren't connected to the ship's compromised systems. "I'll take point," he said. "Tor, watch our six. Drax, Krill, stay in the middle. We move to the emergency shelter on this rock. Call for backup. And wait." "Captain," Drax said quietly. "What if it's her? The human from the bar?" Vex wanted to deny it, to laugh at the absurd suggestion. But the precision of the attack, the patience, the way they had been herded like animals. "It doesn't matter who it is. We're Craxian warriors. We don't run from one enemy." They cycled through the airlock onto the asteroid's surface. The low gravity made movement tricky, but their suits compensated. The emergency shelter was only a kilometer away, a standard Alliance structure designed to protect shipwreck survivors. They moved in formation, weapons ready. The asteroid's surface was a maze of shadows and strange rock formations. Every boulder could hide an enemy. Every crater could be a trap. They made it halfway before Sarah revealed herself. She stood on a ridge above them, silhouetted against the stars. She wore a slim environmental suit, not the bulky combat armor they expected. In her hands was a long rifle, an ancient-looking thing that seemed almost primitive compared to their plasma weapons. "Captain Vex," her voice came through their comm systems, calm and clear. "I believe you said I wouldn't last 5 seconds in a real fight." Vex raised his plasma rifle. "You've made a mistake, human. Show yourself and face us properly. I am facing you, Sarah replied. You're looking right at me. Take your shot. Vex fired without hesitation. The plasma bolt sizzled through space and hit nothing. Sarah had moved the instant he pulled the trigger, faster than seemed possible in an environmental suit. She appeared on another ridge, 50 meters to their left. How? Tor breathed. You rely on your technology, Sarah said, walking along the ridge like it was a casual stroll. Your targeting systems. Your auto-aim. Your predictive algorithms. But what happens when those systems are feeding you false data? She was right. Vex realized their suit's targeting systems were showing her in one place, while she was actually in another. The same quantum interference that had crippled their ship was affecting their personal equipment. Manual targeting, he ordered. Use your eyes, not your sensors. They fired again, trying to track her by sight alone. But Sarah moved like water, flowing from cover to cover. And she wasn't just evading, she was positioning them. Krill stepped backward to get a better angle and triggered a buried charge. The explosion wasn't meant to kill, just to disorient. He stumbled, his rifle flying from his hands. Sarah's shot took him in the leg, a precise hit that penetrated his armor's joint seal. He went down screaming, Krill! Drax tried to help his squadmate, but had to dive for cover as Sarah's rifle cracked again. The shot sparked off a rock inches from his head. They were being hunted. Not fought, hunted. There was a difference, Vex realized with growing horror. In a fight, opponents faced each other with honor. In a hunt, only one side was predator. Fall back to the ship, he ordered. But Tor was already running, panic overriding training. He bounded across the low-gravity terrain in desperate leaps. Sarah tracked him like a hunter tracking fleeing prey. Her shot caught him mid-leap, spinning him around. He crashed into a crater and didn't get up. Vex and Drax dragged the wounded Krill between them, trying to reach cover. But every rock formation they approached seemed to push them toward a specific path. Sarah was hurting them again, controlling their movement with precise shots and hidden charges. Please, Drax gasped, his broken arm screaming with pain. We surrender. We surrender. The captain of your squad said humans were too weak for real combat. Sarah's voice remained conversational, as if discussing weather. He said we were emotional, fragile, that we didn't belong here. Another shot. This one took Drax in the shoulder, sending him tumbling. Non-lethal, but incapacitating. He lay groaning in the dust. Now, it was just Vex, alone among the rocks with a predator he had mocked and dismissed. His plasma rifle felt heavy in his hands. Sweat ran down his scales, despite the suit's temperature control. I was wrong, he said, surprised by how steady his voice sounded. You've proven your point. Sarah appeared again, closer now. Close enough that he could see her face through her helmet visor. She wasn't smiling. There was no joy or anger in her expression. Just cold, professional focus. Have I? She asked. Yesterday you laughed at me. You and your squad found it hilarious that a human woman might be dangerous. Tell me, Captain, are you laughing now? Vex raised his rifle one more time. He was Craxian. He would not beg. Sarah moved faster than his finger could squeeze the trigger. The ancient rifle in her hand spoke once. Vex felt the impact, then nothing as his suit's medical systems flooded him with sedatives. He fell to his knees, then forward into the dust. As consciousness faded, he heard her walking closer, her footsteps soft in the low gravity. For the record, Sarah said quietly, I gave you more chances than you deserved. The Void Hunters I tracked down didn't get warnings. They didn't see me coming, but you needed to understand the lesson before the end. The last thing Vex saw before darkness claimed him was Sarah Chen standing over him. No longer the small, dismissible human woman from the bar. She was what humans had always been. What the Craxians had been too arrogant to see, a persistence predator from a world that had shaped its children into the galaxy's most adaptable hunters. The hunt was over, but the lesson was just beginning to spread. The medical bay on Nexus Station was quiet except for the steady beep of monitoring equipment. 4 Craxian soldiers lay in biobeds, their massive forms looking strangely vulnerable under the white sheets. Captain Vex was conscious, staring at the ceiling with his yellow eyes, while medical nanites repaired the damage to his chest. Dr. Yaram, a six-armed Madaxian, floated between the beds checking readings. "You're lucky," she said to Vex. "Whoever shot you used ammunition designed to incapacitate, not kill. Very precise. A centimeter to the left, and you'd be in the morgue." Vex didn't respond. He had been silent since the rescue team found them on that asteroid 12 hours ago. His squad was alive barely. Tor had a concussion and 3 broken ribs. Krill would walk again, but it would take weeks of therapy. Drax's shoulder and arm would heal, though the young soldier hadn't stopped shaking since he woke up. The door to the medical bay slid open. Admiral Thrace entered, his blue Altarian skin darkening with concern. He was old for his species, with scars from a dozen campaigns crossing his face. He pulled up a chair next to Vex's bed. "Report," Thrace said simply. Vex turned his head slowly. "We were hunted, sir." "Like animals? By the Void Hunters?" "No." Vex's voice was hoarse. "By the human, the woman from the bar." Thrace's expression didn't change, but his skin shifted to a lighter shade, the Altarian equivalent of raising an eyebrow. "Explain." "Tu Manan." So, Vex explained. He told the Admiral everything. From the encounter in the bar, to the systematic destruction of their ship, from the chase across the asteroid, to the final, humiliating defeat. He left nothing out, including his own arrogance and dismissal of the humans' warnings. When he finished, Thrace was quiet for a long moment. "The Thunderclaw's black box confirms your account. The technical analysis is impressive. She used 17 different types of interference, 3 distinct malware programs, and tactical positioning that our computers are calling statistically impossible for a single operator." "She said she hunted the Void Hunter kill team," Vex said. "We didn't believe her. She said she hunted the Void Hunter." "You should have." Thrace pulled out a datapad. "Sarah Chen, former Earth Special Forces, recruited into the Human Hunter Corps 8 years ago. You know what that is?" Vex shook his head. "Neither did I until yesterday. Apparently, humans have a military branch dedicated to what they call persistence hunting. Based on some ancient Earth tradition where humans would chase prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion." Thrace scrolled through the data. "The Hunter Corps takes it to an extreme. One operative, working alone, using minimal technology and maximum patience. They've been deployed against enemies who thought they were safe, who thought they were untouchable. Why didn't we know about this? Because they're very good at their job, and because we, all of us non-humans, made the same mistake you did. We looked at humans and saw physical weakness. We never considered that they might have turned that weakness into a different kind of strength." "Why?" The door opened again. This time, it was Sarah Chen who entered. She wore simple civilian clothes, her hands empty, her expression neutral. Drax made a frightened sound and tried to shrink into his bed. Krill's hand moved instinctively for a weapon that wasn't there. "Admiral," Sarah nodded respectfully. Then she turned to the Craxians. "Captain, I came to check on your recovery." Vex struggled to sit up, his pride warring with the medical nanites trying to keep him still. "Come to gloat?" "No." Sarah pulled up another chair and sat down. "I came to deliver the rest of the lesson. Haven't you done enough?" Tor spoke for the first time, his voice bitter. Sarah looked at each of them in turn. "Let me tell you about human women, Captain. On Earth, for thousands of years, we were considered the weaker sex, smaller, less muscle mass, supposedly more emotional. Sound familiar?" The Craxian said nothing. "But we survived. We thrived. We raised children while gathering food. We defended homes while men were away hunting. We learned to use intelligence and tools to overcome physical disadvantages. We became healers and poisoners, strategists and spies. And yes, hunters." She leaned back in her chair. When humanity met the galaxy, the same assumptions followed us to the stars. Aliens looked at human men and saw weakness. They looked at human women and saw prey. So the Hunter Corps was formed, not to prove a point, but to protect humanity using the skills we developed over millions of years. You could have just told us, Vex said. You didn't have to. Would you have listened? Sarah interrupted. If I had explained all this in the bar, would you have believed me? Or would you have laughed harder? The silence was answer enough. Sarah stood. You'll all make full recoveries. Your ship is being repaired. The official report will list this as a training accident. The Admiral and I agree that public humiliation serves no purpose, but the real report, the classified one, will be studied by military academies across the Alliance. She walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, you lasted longer than most targets do against a hunter. Take pride in that. After she left, the medical bay was quiet for a long time. Finally, Admiral Thrace stood. You've learned something valuable, Captain. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge? Vex looked at his injured squad, then back at the Admiral. Permission to speak freely, sir? Granted. I was a fool. We all were. We judged an entire species by their appearance, dismissed half of them for being female. How many other assumptions are we making? How many other strengths are we blind to because they don't look like our own? Thrace nodded slowly. Now, you're asking the right questions. Rest up. All of you. When you're healed, report to my office. I have a new assignment for your squad. Sir, joint training operations with the Human Hunter Corps. If you're willing. Vex didn't hesitate. We're willing, sir. As Thrace left, Krill spoke up from his bed. Captain, I keep thinking, if she had wanted us dead, we would be, Vex finished. 4 of the Alliance's best soldiers, taken down by one human woman with patience and planning. The galaxy needs to know. 2. But the Admiral said the report would be classified, Drax pointed out. Vex managed a painful smile, the first since their ordeal. Official reports. Yes. But soldiers talk. Don't they? In bars. In mess halls. On ships between the stars. Stories spread, and spread they did. Within a week, every bar on Nexus Station was buzzing with rumors. The mighty Craxians, humbled by a human woman. Details grew with each telling. Some said she had taken them down with her bare hands. Others claimed she had used ancient Earth magic. But the core truth remained. Never underestimate a human. Especially a human woman. The story reached the Void Hunters in their hidden bases. They compared notes and realized that several of their mysteriously missing kill teams had last been seen in sectors where human observers had been reported. Panic spread through their ranks. If humans could hunt the hunters, nowhere was safe. On the planet Kellar, where the warrior culture prized physical strength above all else, female Kellarians heard the story and began to question their society's restrictions. If human women could be hunters despite being smaller than their males, why couldn't they? The Zilani Assassin Guild sent discreet inquiries to Earth about training exchanges. The Madaxians started studying human persistence hunting techniques. Even the prideful Altarians admitted they might have something to learn. Sarah Chen became a ghost story, a legend, a warning. Different species told it different ways, but the message was always the same. Humans were not what they seemed. Their women were not weak. Their patience was not passivity. Their size was not a disadvantage. 6 months later, Vex stood in front of a mixed group of Alliance soldiers. His scars had healed, but he wore them proudly now. Beside him stood Sarah Chen, no longer a mystery but a colleague and, he dared to think, a friend. Listen up, Vex barked at the assembled troops. You think you know about combat. You think you understand strength. Today, Hunter Chen and I are going to show you how wrong you are. A young Craxian in the front row snorted. No offense, Captain, but how much can we learn from a human female? Vex exchanged a look with Sarah. She smiled slightly and nodded. Volunteer, Vex announced. You just volunteered for the demonstration. Hunter Chen. The private thinks he has nothing to learn from a human woman. Sarah stepped forward, still smiling. Don't worry, Private. This won't hurt. Much. The demonstration lasted 10 minutes. By the end, the young Craxian was on the ground, disarmed and immobilized by someone half his size. The room was dead silent. Lesson 1, Sarah said, helping the stunned soldier to his feet. In the hunter's game, size means nothing. Patience means everything. Now, who wants to learn? Every hand in the room went up. Later, in the station's new quiet bar, the old one had become too rowdy with soldiers seeking stories. Vex and Sarah shared a drink. She had water, as always. He had learned to appreciate it. Do you think they really understand? Sarah asked. Or are they just afraid now? Fear can be the beginning of wisdom, Vex replied. I was afraid on that asteroid, terrified. But it opened my eyes, made me see what I had been blind to. And what's that? Vex considered his words carefully. That strength comes in many forms. That every species, every gender, every individual has capabilities we might not expect. That the galaxy is far more complex and dangerous and wonderful than any of us imagined. Sarah raised her glass. To complexity, to humility, Vex countered. They drank, comfortable in the silence that followed. Around them, the station bustled with activity. Ships came and went, carrying the story further into space. On a dozen worlds, military doctrines were being rewritten. On 100 more, young females of various species were demanding access to warrior training previously denied to them. The human hunter corps remained small, selective. But its reputation grew enormous. Pirates and criminals added humans to the list of species not to antagonize. The void hunters retreated deeper into their hidden bases, jumping at shadows that might hide patient human eyes. And in bars across the galaxy, soldiers still told the story. How 4 Craxian warriors had laughed at a human woman. How she had warned them, and they hadn't listened. How she had hunted them down one by one. Not for vengeance but for education. The details changed, grew, became legend. But the heart remained true, a reminder that appearances deceive, that assumptions kill. That in the vast darkness between stars, the most dangerous predator might be the one you dismissed without a second thought. Captain Vex never forgot that lesson. He wore it in his scars, carried it in his changed perspective, shared it with every soldier he trained. When young warriors boasted of their strength, he would tell them about Sarah Chen. When they dismissed an enemy as weak, he would remind them of the asteroid field. Years later, when the Alliance faced its greatest threat, an invasion by creatures from beyond the galactic rim, it was the human hunters who found the enemy's weakness. Not through strength or firepower, but through patience, observation, and the willingness to be underestimated. The invasion was repelled, the galaxy saved, and once again humans proved that they were far more than they appeared. But that's another story, one that begins in a bar where a soldier meets a human and makes the mistake of laughing. Because in this vast universe of infinite diversity, the greatest danger is not the enemy you fear, it's the one you dismiss. Just ask the Craxians who laughed at a human woman, right up until she began to hunt.